Mind. Before we start, let's have a moment's silence. So I'll now hand over to Monica to introduce the final session.
Thank you, James, and a very warm welcome to everyone in the 6th day of our workshop, the last day of the workshop today. And today, let us have the glimpses of the truth consciousness or the supermind, or what is called integral cognition through Dr. Basu. So over to you, Dr. Basu.
So thank you, Monica. Thank you, James. And we will be ending our workshop today with this final theme of the supermind, or what Aurobindonian called the field of integral cognition. Now, what would be an integral cognition? We talked about our individual cognition. We talked about global cognition. Now, see, it is difficult to describe. I will just tell you to just think or visualize the road in front of your house, which looks something. Now, if you go to the top of a 10th story, the 10th floor, then you will find that the road looks different. Not the road that you look far below. And then you are looking at the road from the top of a mountain, then the road looks entirely different. So the same thing, but the vision has changed. And now, if from a helicopter or from an aeroplane, you are viewing the road, the same road, then again, the perspective is totally different. You see, it is the same road, but you have different views from different perspectives. From different levels, you see it in a different way. So everything in this life, at different, the problems might be the same, but from different levels of consciousness, you can view the same thing in a different way, and therefore the solutions for problems arising at each level would be different at each plane, because at each plane the perspective is different. In an integral cognition, you are simultaneously seeing the same thing from all the levels, or you are simultaneously seeing everything together, from all the levels together, the planes of consciousness, and the thing that you are wanting to see, everything together you are seeing. Very difficult to understand that you are seeing everything together. It's an integral cognition. Everything is there together at the same time, simultaneously. So very difficult for us to understand, because we are accustomed to seeing things from one perspective at a time. But multiple perspectives, we can see from a higher perspective and things changes. But simultaneously, if we can see from the highest and the lowest perspective the same thing, then you can imagine what could be our vision. There's something, you can have some inkling of what is an integral vision. Now, the supermind is the highest culmination of our trajectory of our cognitive consciousness that it can reach. You know that we had talked, that Aurobindonian says that evolution doesn't change, doesn't stop with the human being. So mind is a what you call a phase of transformation. The human being is a transitional being. That is what Sri Aurobindo says, that the human being is a transitional being. And he has the capacity to evolve. And he has to evolve into higher and higher beings, greater and greater beings. And this evolution will continue in this cycle, because every cycle has got its own design. And in this cycle, what has been designed, in this cycle of our life that we are in on earth, what has been designed is that the evolution of consciousness will go on and on until it reaches a very high plane, the supramental plane, which is the creative consciousness, the plane of the creative consciousness. And then it can be brought up, because and then evolution reaching there means that it has become dynamic in life. So that means that that creative consciousness has come down and has become manifested in human life, in human conditions, in the earth consciousness, so that it helps in the or it facilitates the flowering of a new type of human being, which Sri Aurobindo called the supramental being or the Gnostic being. So this is a great journey. This is something which has never been guessed before, never been dreamt before, and never been presented before, which Sri Aurobindo is presenting, and a very, very great vision, which I will say that he is he is the greatest philosophers in the world, or the greatest visionaries in the world, because it is he alone who has built a golden future for humanity by erecting the structure of the supramental consciousness. And it is not only he has conceived it, he has made all means, he and the mother, they have made all means as twin avatars to make it effective, to make that not only as a possibility in a what you call in an ideological state, but that it can become practical in a realistic state. So that is their sadhana, that they have activated that consciousness, they have activated that supramental consciousness, so that it can be active one day in our life when we are ready, when our receptacles are ready, when our adhars are ready, then it will be what you call ready to manifest in life. But that to manifest, they need an activation. So Sri Aurobindo has not only, together with the mother, conceived of such a beautiful thing, but they have also made it activated. They have made it practical. They have made it in a way that they can be reached at one point of time when we are ready. So this is a great contribution, which is very futuristic, and that is why it is very difficult to understand Sri Aurobindo. Many people say that Sri Aurobindo is, we can't understand Sri Aurobindo, is so difficult. The difficulty arises because he is thinking about or conceptualizing about the future of the earth, not only merely about the present conditions. So we'll go to the Supermind directly, we'll go to our slides. These are the same slides I have used, some of you might be familiar with, for the Integral Life Center in the USA. I've used the same slides, so I'm using that again because I told you, like the slides yesterday, that these are things that can be shared again and again, because they need to be viewed many times. So this is something that I started on the first day, hinting about this thing, that the concept of the supermind is not only something he is bringing down in the trajectory of evolution, it is also solving a great metaphysical dilemma. And that metaphysical dilemma has been there for thousands of years, And because in Indian tradition, Indian spiritual tradition, we have always been told that the one has become the many. That in the beginning there was nothing except the one, or the nothing itself was the one, or the one is nothingness, or the one is the only thing that is present. The one is absolute. It is just the one. And at a certain point of time, the one decides to become the many. Now again, this also is a misnomer. This also is a misnomer that at one point of time there was a big gong and suddenly one became the many, like that what scientists believe. It might not be like that. It might be that the one is always present and the many also are always present. One is always present and the many are also always present, because the relationship between one and many is not a relationship in time. It is not a relationship in time. It is a relationship in consciousness. It is a relationship in consciousness. But it might be that one and the many are always there. If the many was not there, one would have remained. And the many manifests out of the one. Many manifests out of the one, and they're always there. You can be either on this side or you can be on the other side. But the many manifests out of the one. So if the many was not there, the many had been dissolved, something remained, and that was the one. Now, how did this one become the many? How did this one become the many? This was a great puzzle. And even I told you that the first day that Sri Aurobindo answers this question. And before that, Swami Vivekananda has number of times he has told this, which is there in his collected works, that how one became many is a puzzle, and people describe it by the word Maya, by illusion. Maya is illusion. One has become many. That is what Swamiji said. But then he emphasized, Swami Vivekananda emphasized that the word Maya is a descriptive term. It just describes that by Maya one became many, but it doesn't explain. It's not an explanatory term. And he has said that this has not been answered for many thousands of years. And if somebody answers it, it will be a great thing. And Sri Aurobindo takes the onus to answer this puzzle. And by doing that, he conceives of a creative consciousness, which is creative consciousness between the absolute unity and the manifestation. Because in the absolute unity, which is total unity, there is no movement at all. Because unity means there is an effacement of all sorts of movements. Nothing is there. No movement is there. No possibility of any manifestation is there. You see, the possibility of any manifestation automatically means there should be a movement. If there is no movement, there is nothing. So you cannot have something created there at the level of one, which is totally featureless, a blank featureless one cannot create. So you have to have another plane of consciousness where creation occurs. And this is what he looks at the origin of the creative idea, the creative consciousness. Because he said it cannot be the absolute. It cannot be the absolute, and it can also not be Satchidananda, where there is no movement. Because in Satchidananda is a term that has been described, that describes absolute in the way we can describe it, because our ways of description are limited. But then Sat, Chit, Ananda are not additive terms. Sat plus Chit plus Ananda, existence plus consciousness plus bliss. They are not additive terms. They are the same thing in different poises. They are the same thing in different poises. And it cannot also be the universal mind. People thought that the manifestation occurred in the cosmic consciousness, in the universal consciousness. But then the universal consciousness also has its limitations, because the universal consciousness contains all so many mixtures of things. It contains positive forces, it contains negative forces. Evidently something which has an origin must be in a different plane, must be absolutely in a different stratosphere. It's not that the universal mind. So it has to be somewhere else. And that Sri Aurobindo comes to the concept of the supermind. So how to understand the concept of the supermind is difficult, but I will tell you, you consider yourself to be an artist. You consider yourself to be an artist, you have to draw a picture. You have to draw a picture. Suppose you are an artist and you are drawing a picture. So forget about what I have given here. Forget about this slide. Just think about this, that you are an artist, each one of you has to draw a picture. Now, how will you go about in drawing that picture? First of all, you have to have an idea. And then you must have a very creative idea to come up with a creative picture. You don't want to repeat what others have done. You just want to make a photograph of a beautiful scenery. you want to paint something which is very creative. So you have to have an idea. You have to have an idea. That idea has to be implemented in your canvas. So you have to have an idea, and that idea it has to be implemented in your drawing, in the picture that you're wanting to make. So that you have an idea. Now, is it enough to have an idea? It is not enough to have an idea. So to effectuate that idea, you have to have a force, a willpower. Because it might be that tomorrow morning you get up and you have a bright idea of drawing a beautiful picture, but you might not have the energy. You might not have the energy to execute that idea. You might feel bored, you might feel meaningless, you might feel tired, you might feel physically unfit. So you have to have an energy, a force, a willpower, which will help to execute that idea. So having an idea is not enough. You have to have an energy or a force to execute that idea. And then when you are wanting to paint a picture, when you are wanting to paint a picture, you can paint in different mediums. You can paint in pastel, in pencil, in oil color. But then each medium has got its own dynamics, its own way, its own law. So you can't use the watercolor to draw the picture of draw an oil painting. You can't use the oil to draw a watercolor. You can't do that. So there must be a law of every medium that you are using. So you are wanting to execute something, but that execution cannot be haphazard. That execution cannot be haphazard. You have to do it in a focused way, and that focusing means that you have to follow some norms, and that norms should be different for different mediums that you want to do. So you have to have an idea, that means to draw a picture. You have to have the energy to execute that idea, and you have to have a grammar of expression of that idea. You have to have a grammar, a way, a law, so that the idea is executed according to the norms you want. And then you want to have a field, you want to have a canvas, or you want to have a big wall where you are going to paint. So you want to have a field or a matrix where you are going to execute it. So it has to be executed in a background. So you want to have something which is going to hold the picture, something which will hold the picture, something which will be upholding it. That picture will be remaining for some time. It will be remaining there. People will see it. People will appreciate it. You yourself will appreciate it. Others will appreciate it. What a beautiful creation that I have made. So the creation has to be sustained. In other words, it has to be sustainable. It has to be sustainable, and sustainable needs a field where it is sustaination, where the phenomenon of sustainability will be executed. You need to have that field. Now you project your vision of an artist to the vision of the world artist, the artist who has manifested the whole world, the whole universe, the whole creation. You just think, you project it there. You see, that is a big mind that has conceived of the universe, the galaxies, all the stars, all the planets, everything, all the creation. And not only it had conceived of everything, it had an inherent willpower, energy, or force that actually made that thing possible. Everything was put in its place. Everything was put in its place. So not only one had that great mind that had created the universes, the multiverses, all these things, from the Milky Way to the small animal that you see in the forest, everything that has been created comes from an idea. And the idea was totipotent. The idea was full of power. The idea was full of power. So immediately the idea became effective. So there was an inherent force in that idea. It was not an empty idea. It was not an isolated idea. It was an idea that was impregnated with energy, with force. So immediately everything was executed. So you have the stars, planets, the Milky Ways, and the animals, the plants, the mountains, and everything manifested according to what the idea wanted to do. That's a beautiful thing. And when the manifestation of such a great scale takes place, such a great manifestation takes place, you see, infinite possibilities are released. When a great manifestation, huge manifestation, manifestation which is of the magnitude of the multiverses is going to be released, then infinite possibilities are released. And in that release of infinite possibilities, there can be infinite chaos. You see, it can be infinite confusion, because infinite things are released at once. So that the confusion doesn't happen, there must be a divine law which is putting everything in its place. So because there is a divine law, so everything is so harmonious, so systematic. So we have the planets moving around the sun. We are having the great stars moving around their trajectories. We are having the evolution going on. We are having the laws of physics. We are having the laws of chemistry. We are having the laws of biology. All these things are perfect, perfectly executed. Nature, everything in nature is perfectly executed. Everything in the galaxies are perfectly executed because there is a certain law that sees that everything is done perfectly in harmony so that everything is aligned with every other thing in the universe. So there is a law, there is a great law there that is acting also. And there is a field or matrix where the manifestation has to take place. And for our terms, in our consciousness, you can understand the field or matrix by our concept of space and time, by successions in time and divisibilities in space. Now, this is very important. Successions in time, because time moves forward. Time is dynamic, time moves forward. And space, because there are different types of spaces giving rise to different kind of backgrounds, different kind of gestalts. So you have got a divisibility in the space and you have got successions in time. So time presents to you as successive moments. Space presents to us as something that is divisible, and which is occupied by different things. It is not only that space is divisible in terms of physical parameters. Is also in our human consciousness. Also, space is divisible. No? We have a space where our thoughts occur. We have a space where our emotions occur. And then Shivabendu described Chidakash. There is a space which contains our souls, or which holds our soul. So inside a human being also, there are so many different spaces where Shivabendu told someone, if you are angry, your anger also occupies a space. If you are angry and you are vibrating with anger, pulsating with anger, trembling with anger, then the anger is also occupying a space. So you see, spaces are divisible because there are different ways of understanding space, where the space itself is present in so many denominants in a single individual being. And then if you consider the whole multiverses, the space is present in so many denominants. So you see, these are the characteristics of the supermind. Will have then these characteristics. The supermind will have a creative idea. And that creative idea, you see, the idea that is there in the supermind produces creative ideas. And that idea is different from our ideas. It is an idea which is impregnated with an executive force. So each idea has got a force which will execute it immediately. So each idea is there with an automatic will. It's not that you impose a will to make that idea effective. You harness your will and tag it with an idea to make it effective, as we do in our normal human beings, because in us, the knowledge and will have become separated. So in us, the knowledge and will are separated. That's the problem. That's the reason of our problems in the world. If you ask me what is the main reason of the problems in the world, I will tell that in Shivabendu's viewpoint, the main reason is that in our human being, consciousness and force, which have become knowledge and willpower, what is consciousness and force in a human being minds, it is represented as knowledge and willpower. They have become separated. And because they have become separated, I might have great knowledge, but I might not have the power to execute it. Or I might be greatly powerful, but I might not be backed by adequate knowledge. And it is our sadhana to bring them together. Of course, they will be brought together finally in their completest union that can only occur in the supermind. That can only occur in the supermind. But at our level, we have to go on striving. And you see that this is the human dilemma, because in us, this has been separated. Whereas up above in Satchidananda, they are same, and down below in the electron, there is also an affinity between knowledge and action, because the electrons know that they have to rotate. The electrons know that they have to rotate. And if they stop rotating, if the electrons stop rotating, what would happen? The whole universe would have collapsed. So in between the electrons and between the superconscious, in the human mind, everything has become separated, knowledge and will have been separated. But in the supermind, the idea and the energy are covered with each other. So that's why in human evolution, we reach the supramental consciousness. If we can reach the supramental, if we can bring down in evolution the supramental, then what will happen? What will happen is this, that the knowledge will become automatically effective. Knowledge will become automatically effective. and the will become automatically luminous. You see, once we reach the supramental consciousness, or once it is activated in the art, or once our evolution brings us to the supramental, then what will happen is that the knowledge will become immediately, the knowledge will become effective. You don't have to wait that when the knowledge will be effective, and immediately the will become luminous. So this is the beautiful thing that can happen. And then what is this law? What is this law that places the idea force in alignment with the rest of the manifestation? So each idea force that is what you call emanated from the supermind releases an idea force, and each idea force doesn't get lost in chaos, doesn't get lost in an anarchy, doesn't get lost in the infinite expressions of everything, in infinity. So it is going to be executed properly in its proper position. And that law, which is such a positive thing, is not an illusion. You cannot call it an illusion. Sri Aurobindo called it the divine Maya, the divine Maya. I always emphasize this point because when I was very young, I remember when I was very young and just passed out or just graduated, and I used to go and whenever I used to go and give a deliberation on Sri Aurobindo, then people outside the Sri Aurobindo circles would immediately come come running to me and say, "Oh, Sri Aurobindo, he knew everything, but he didn't know Maya." I used to get surprised. What did they say? Sri Aurobindo doesn't understand Maya. What nonsense they are saying? Sri Aurobindo doesn't understand Maya. But Sri Aurobindo didn't consider Maya to be an illusion, just an illusion, but it is an illusion in the lower nature. In the higher nature, or in that supramental, and even in the supramental nature, in the supramental consciousness, Maya is not something else. Maya is something that is a law, a divine law. Might be because of that, I don't know. They might not have read the Life Divine. They might have read some what you call offhand descriptions of the lower Maya, which Sri Aurobindo had given, and not. I made it understood that it was not the whole phenomenon of Maya. So always, even long afterwards, I ceased to be a youngster when I was in my middle age. Then also when I had gone to an university to speak on Sri Aurobindo, they had invited me. And there also the philosophy department people said, "Oh, Sri Aurobindo knew everything, but he didn't have much knowledge about Maya." But because that is they had not embarked on that journey to understand Sri Aurobindo in great details. But Sri Aurobindo is more interested in the divine Maya that puts everything in its place, and which you cannot understand from the lower nature. From the lower nature, then you can think that everything is illusory, everything has happened by accident or by magic, but it's not that. That is something which is definitively done, and that is there high above. And then the supramental consciousness manifests space and time. Now I will take that in a short way in the next slide. That is something very interesting. How space and time come out from the supramental consciousness. It itself requires a big elaboration. We'll speak about it in a very concise way, because otherwise it will take our time. But mind you, this is what beautifully Sri Aurobindo has presented, how space and time are created or manifested out of the supramental. Or it is a supramental idea that has created space. It is a supramental idea that has created time. So now we'll come to that. But we say that in the idea in the supramental consciousness, each idea force, Sri Aurobindo calls them a real idea, an idea that can be translated into reality, an idea that is itself a reality, It's not in the field of what you call conception or in the field of imagination. An idea is ordinarily, our idea falls under the domain of imagination. But here, the idea itself is reality. That's why it is a real idea. And this idea that creates the multiverses must be a totipotent idea, omniscient and omnipotent. So it is totipotent, full of that potency, full of that power, and present everywhere, and must have an inbuilt executive force so that the idea can be translated into reality. That's what we were talking in the last slide, that each idea must have an inbuilt executive force. So the force is inbuilt in that idea. As an artist, it reproduces a pre-existent idea. Similarly, the real idea programs. So real idea programs, it is doing a software programming. What programming it is doing? What lies concentrated in uncreative self-awareness is now organized into in creative knowledge that organizes them into spiritual archetypes. So these idea forces are spiritual archetypes. So what lies concentrated in uncreative self-awareness, it becomes converted into creative knowledge that organizes again into spiritual archetypes. And this programming takes place in the creative consciousness, poised between the unmanifest Satchidananda and the manifestation. It contains the self-determining truth of creation. So this programming is taking place in the supermind, which is the creative consciousness, the supreme creative consciousness, and it is poised between the unmanifest and the manifest. It contains the self-determining truth of creation. Nobody from outside is determining it. It is self-determining. So it is determining itself, its own course of action. So you have to understand this, that nobody from outside is directing, is an extra what you call an extra cosmic creator or an extra universal creator has not come and is not directing things. It is not like that. It is the consciousness of the supermind which itself is active, which itself is determining, which itself is creating. And the divine law of the higher Maya, out of infinite possibilities, consistent patterns have to be made, or else there will be endless chaos. You see, out of infinite possibilities, what we are talking, that consistent patterns have to be made. So consistent, if the consistent patterns were not there, we would not have calculated the way we send a spaceship to the Mars. We would not have been able to do it. Because there is an infinite law, there is a higher Maya, there is a divine law. Everything is in its place, and now we can safely calculate the way in which we can send a spaceship to the Mars. The divine law commissions the selective faculty of knowledge to shape finite appearances out of infinite reality. Static truth of essential being becomes ordered truth of active being. A phenomenal being emerges from the supreme being. From the supreme being, which is beyond all phenomena. Human beings, we are phenomenal beings. We are just a phenomenon in time and space. We are just a phenomenon in time and space. A phenomenal being emerges from something which is beyond all phenomena, the supreme being. How is that possible? That is possible because it is commissioned by the divine law, which commissions the selective faculty of knowledge to shape finite appearances out of infinite reality. Out of infinite reality, it will shape finite appearances. These finite appearances might be one module of physical laws, one module of laws of chemistry, one module of laws of biology, or so many things that are there which make up the manifestation. And what was static will become dynamic. What was static will become organized or arranged in a particular sequence. Everything will be sequentially arranged. Like evolution, no? It is sequentially arranged from the smaller to the bigger animals or the more sophisticated animals. Sorry, not bigger, but more sophisticated animals in consciousness we go. And infinity cannot be perfectly expressed in finite. As infinity cannot be perfectly expressed in finite, an element of imperfection will always remain. That is beautiful. That is beautiful. Why it is beautiful? Because the element of imperfection is always remaining in us. Very, very difficult to hold the infinite in the finite. Impossible. So something will be missing. And because something is missing, we will always want to yearn to outgrow ourselves. Otherwise, we will not want to outgrow ourselves. We will not want to exceed ourselves. We will not want to grow. We will not want to proceed towards our highest consumptions. We will not do that. Only because something is always that imperfect. And something will always be imperfect because you cannot hold the perfection of the Supreme in an imperfect finite creation. You cannot do that. Now that is the different poisons of the supermind. So at the beginning, when the programming has to take place, when the programming has to take place, what is the status there? The status there is the primary poise, where you have the knowledge of oneness from the poise of oneness. All manifestation is present there as an essence. So there the programming is starting. The programming for the manifestation that creation would occur is starting where at first everything was one. Everything was one, but an essence has developed. An essence, something has a wide canvas you have just put a stroke. With a brush, you have just put a stroke. In a white canvas, in the white canvas of the Supermind, white canvas, just a stroke has been put. Just to have put a stroke with a brush, and that manifestation is present as an essence. That's the primary poise. And the secondary poise, when the programming is running and is bringing out and is planning how to bring the multiplicity from the oneness. So that's the secondary poise, is a knowledge of multiplicity from the poise of oneness. So the poise of oneness is there, and the oneness is planning how to become multiple. So it is looking at the multiplicity from the poise of oneness. It is manufacturing the multiplicity, but at the same time, it is manufacturing from the oneness and looking at it from the poise of oneness. You have to contrast this with our modern science, which looks at multiplicity or studies multiplicity from the poise of multiplicity. In our modern science, we actually study multiplicity from the poise of multiplicity. So that's the difference between us. And there it was oneness. In the oneness, first it was just a essence, and then when the essence is developing, elaborating into a multitude, then still it is oneness that is holding the multitude. It is oneness that is holding the multitude. So the multitude is being seen from the perspective of oneness. And the matrix of space and time. In the first poise, in the primary poise, spaceless and timeless reality, it is a spaceless and timeless. Space and time are present as an essence only. So in the beginning, it is spaceless and timeless. In the beginning, it is spaceless and timeless. Then what happens? An element of inequality in the consciousness force in Chit Shakti is put in. The programming is done. What programming is done? The programming is done very beautifully. An element of inequality is introduced. Where? In the field of Chit Shakti, in the field of consciousness, in the field of force, and between consciousness and force. So consciousness and force will become separate. See, consciousness and force, Chit and Shakti, they are together. They are together in the Supermind. And now an inequality and principle of inequality will be there, and they will be divided. So consciousness will be divided into force and from force. And then consciousness and force, they themselves will become divided. An unequal concentration of consciousness gives rise to space. An unequal concentration of consciousness gives rise to space. And a multiple distribution of force gives rise to time. A multiple distribution of force gives rise to time. So first what happened? The element of inequality was introduced. Consciousness became separated from force. And within consciousness, an unequal concentration gave rise to different kind of spaces. And within the force, a multiple distribution gave rise to a progression of time. So space is just an objective extension of consciousness, and time is its subjective extension. Space would be measured by divisibility, time by mobility. Space is measured by divisibility, time by mobility. So time is mobile, and space is divisible. You see that the whole thing has come because just an element of inequality in a programming was introduced, and that went on doing its work. That went on separating consciousness and force. Now, why inequality was introduced? Because unless inequality is there, the manifestation will not be variegated. We would all be uniform things. There will not be variations in us. No? There is a variation between me and an elephant. There is a variation between me and a different species. There is a variation between me and also other human beings. There are variations at different levels. At the biological level, at the psychological level, at the physical level, everywhere there is a variation. And these variations make up the richness, the complexity of manifestation. If this richness and complexity would not be there, if the inequality principle had not intervened. So that's why an inequality principle had to be there. I just trying to say that I told you that my friend Michael always says that Sri Aurobindo is Einstein, Buddha, and Shakespeare together and then exceeds them. You see, Einstein introduced the fourth dimension of time in addition to length, breadth, and height. Their combination he called the space-time continuum. It can be considered as a cylinder over which a spiral is out. That was Einstein. Sri Aurobindo was asked this, and look at Sri Aurobindo's comments that he envisages space and time like Einstein but surpasses them. Sri Aurobindo says it is only a phrase. You cannot clump space and time together. You cannot clump space and time together. They are the fundamental dual dimensions of the Brahman. So time cannot be dedicated to the position of a mere dimension of space. Time is not a mere dimension of space. It is independent. Time and space are equally independent entities or independent phenomena, independent perspectives. So independent paradigms. They cannot be clubbed together. As Sri Aurobindo says, that creation will not, because creation will no longer be static, progression will occur. Because of inequality, error will occur. Because creation will no longer be static, progression will occur. Because creation is no longer static, so we are always progressing. But because there is a principle of inequality, there will always be errors also. So that errors come into our life in different ways. Even you see in a practical way, equality or inequality we view in completely different terms. So the supermind, what happens? The supermind descends to the overmind. Supermind descends to the overmind, where the spiritual archetypes start to become unique and exclusive, though unity is an immanent Godhead. You see, from the supermind, the creative idea comes to the overmind, where the multiplicity will start being active. You see, the programming has been done, the programming has been done of multiplicity appearing out of unity, but the actual coming out of the multiplicity, actual what you call execution of the multiplicity. So the multiplicity will actually happen, that occurs at a lower level, at the level of the overmind. So the many become gradually more important, though in the overmind the many are aware of an implicit unity. You see, in the overmind, the many begins to become important, the many begins to dominate. In the supermind, it was the unity principle which was dominating. So at one time it gave rise to the multiplicity, but it was still the multiplicity from the cause of unity. In the overmind, things are going to change. The many is going to begin to dominate, and many, you see, the many will gradually afterwards lose their contact with the unity principle. Once it loses the contact with the unity principle below the overmind, then ignorance will occur, and that ignorance is known as avidya. Avidya is the knowledge of multiplicity. Avidya is the knowledge of multiplicity which has lost the knowledge of unity. The knowledge of multiplicity which has lost the knowledge of unity. You see, avidya you have to term in a different way. All our sciences that we do it in a separate way, delinking it from other sciences. All our disciplines, delinking it from other disciplines. When we study, then we are studying avidya, the knowledge of the multiplicity. So it's not that ignorance in our terms, what we use ignorance. It is viewed in a cosmic way. You see, we use the term. I say that this person is ignorant. That is a different thing. That he doesn't is educated. He is not educated or something. You might feel. It might appear like that. But here, when you use the word avidya, it is used in a cosmic sense. It is not used in an individual sense. So it is a knowledge of multiplicity without the knowledge of unity. And because this knowledge of multiplicity was there, we could develop different disciplines in a unique way. If this multiplicity was not there, we would not have developed physics as a unique discipline by itself, chemistry as a unique discipline by itself, or all disciplines that have come, they have been developed to the utmost limit, or they're beyond their limits, or in a what you call in very, very unique ways, only because the multiplicity allowed them to develop, forgetting the unitary base or the unitary root of everything. So if the supermind is between, this is also slide that we showed yesterday, if the supermind is between the unmanifest and the manifest, if the supermind is between the unmanifest and the manifest, the overmind is between the total knowledge and the multiplicity, avidya, where the sense of unity has been lost. You see, in the overmind that is multiplicity starts, but it is aware of the underlying unity. Below the overmind, that underlying unity is totally lost, so it lapses into avidya. So overmind is like a golden lead, a creative oversoul, or a golden lead. In the Upanishads, there is this phrase golden lead, which Sri Aurobindo interprets as the overmind. The golden lead, which is used in the Upanishads, Sri Aurobindo equates it with the overmental principle or the creative oversoul. It is there between the vidya and the avidya. It is there intervening between the two. And it's all about how the inconscious is created. Inconscious, we have to know because unless the inconscious is conquered is very difficult, and the full conquest of the inconscious can only be done by the supermind. You see that we cannot control the inconscious fully. Inconscious is not the Freudian unconscious. Inconscious is below the Freudian unconscious. The Freudian unconscious is the unconscious of the mind, but the inconscious is not only a mental inconscience, it's a physical inconscience, is a mental inconscience, is a vital inconscience, and it is a complete absence of all consciousness. And then below it is a complete absence of everything, a complete absence of everything. Forget about what we think, reject from the mind and forms the mental unconscious of the Freud, or what we reject from our collective systems to form the collective unconscious. Forget about that. It's something which is even beyond everything. So it is complete denial, total negation of everything. Now the overmind is a screen between the supermind and the manifestation, and it is not a passive screen but a dynamic entity, a protective double, because it does not allow the direct action of the supermind on the ignorance, because the ignorance will not be able to bear the effulgence. If the supermind was directly acting, the supermind, the creative consciousness was directly acting on the ignorance, on the inconscience, it would not have been possible, because it would not have been able to bear the effulgence. Everything would have become chaotic. But even though it is not allowing a full influx of the supramental light, the overmind is like a screen, like a filter between the supermind and whatever there is below. But the overmind diffuses a diminished light in the ignorance. So it is diffusing a diminished light in the ignorance. This light throws a contrary shadow. So it just projects a diminished light, and that light projects a contrary shadow. And that paradoxically devours all the light. And therefore the inconscience becomes bigger and bigger. You see how beautifully she describes how the inconscience has been made. That the supramental light is cut off because of the overmind, but something percolates. That little bit of light that percolates is a diminished light, but it throws a contrary shadow. It throws a shadow, and that shadow is paradoxically devoured. No? This light throws a contrary shadow, and that shadow itself is devouring all the other light that is coming. So when the first light is being given, a shadow is being formed, and that shadow is taking up all the other light that is coming, the successive lights that are coming. And this facilitates the creation or the enlargement of the inconscience. The inconscience goes on enlarging and enlarging because of that. So a little bit of light was thrown, and that light gave a shadow, and that shadow was again gobbled up by the that shadow gobbled up all the other light that was coming afterwards. So that shadow is now formed, and your own shadow that you have created is now gobbling up all the light that is being coming afterwards. So it is the inconscience, which can be said that it is not something separate, created by the devil or the Satan or the Mephistopheles. So they are having their field there, they are having their enjoyment there. The devil, the Satan, the Asura, they are having their field there, but they have not created it. It has been created from the Supreme. It has been created by the Supreme in a sequential way, when the supermind percolated a little bit of light through the overmind, and that light through a shadow, and that shadow gobbled up all the light that was coming afterwards. So I created my own Frankenstein, as if the overmind created its own Frankenstein. The overmind created his own Frankenstein, and that Frankenstein became the inconscience, which afterwards became so powerful that it didn't care for the overmind. It was not being controlled by the overmind. Ultimately, it can only be controlled by the supramental. So that's why the overmind has been called the first parent of ignorance, the parent of Frankenstein. So now this will be, I will not bore you further, this is the last slide, but very carefully, very carefully, if you study this, what has been said here, then you can understand. Just begin to understand what the phenomenon of the twin avatar, what they're going to bring. You see, the supermind permits differentiation of the undifferentiated. Supermind is permitting differentiation of the undifferentiated. Each differentiated aspect holds the essence of the supermind. So it is permitting differentiation of what cannot be differentiated. But each differentiated aspect is holding the whole. So each part that has been sent here has the potentiality to manifest the whole. That's why a human being can also become a supramental being. Now, the principle is this, that if the mind principle has been created by the supermind, if the supermind has actually created the mind principle, it must be capable of resolving back to it through a reverse development of expansion. If the mind principle has projected something, then that must also have the capacity to come back to the source, to the Godhead. So through expanding oneself, through expanding, it can expand. You see, what has been projected has become concise, has become small, has become diminished in stature, and then it can go on expanding till it reaches the source from where, the limitless source from where it came. Because to go to the limitless, you have to expand yourself. You have to expand yourself. You want to go to the limitless. You have been, as a limited thing, you have been thrown out from the limitless, and go back to the limitless. You have to go on expanding so that you can merge into the limitless. But the human being also has to go, and the way human being has to go on expanding to go to the source, to go to the limitless, is to evolve in consciousness through evolution. To evolve in consciousness through evolution. Mind you, this evolutionary expansion of consciousness is different from the biological evolution that we are accustomed with. We are accustomed with biological evolution. Pari passu with the biological evolution, a spiritual evolution is also taking place. Simultaneous to the biological evolution, a spiritual evolution of consciousness is also taking place. They are two different paradigms. Remember, they are two different paradigms. Though this physical evolution is dependent upon the spiritual evolution. The physical evolution is dependent upon the spiritual evolution, and the spiritual evolution, to make it make it self practical, has to be also dependent on the physical evolution. So they are complementaries. But behind the Darwinian evolutionary phenomenon that is going on, there is a spiritual evolution of consciousness that is going on, and only in the spiritual evolution of consciousness you can, when you just reach the level of mind, you can be capable of a conscious expansion. So long until you have reached the level of mind, the expansion, or in terms of biology we call it evolution, that evolution was done automatically by nature. We didn't want that we want to graduate from the monkey to the man. We didn't want it. It was the force, it was the great force, the divine law that has made it come there. But once human beings have been formed, we have been given a willpower, and the willpower, in that willpower we have been given a choice, the choice to collaborate or not to collaborate or to destroy ourselves, either to collaborate with the Supreme or to destroy ourselves. Because we have been given this capacity to collaborate, so we have been given a conscious choice to go in expansion. But we can destroy ourselves. We can not take that choice. We can destroy our potentialities. We can kill each other with our bombs. In fact, Sri Aurobindo, very great, very interesting, and one of the most poignant sonnets, it ends like this: thus whacked on the surreal world until the scientists played with atoms and blew out the universe before God had time to shout. Thus whacked on the surreal world until the scientists played with atoms and blew out the universe before God had time to shout. So before God had time to shout, because we have taken a conscious choice, we can destroy our potentialities, so that we don't destroy our potentialities, so that we can go on doing our work of expanding and go to the limitless, expand to be merged with the limitless. So that's why the avatars have come to us. Avatars also are descents, special descents. They are not people who have evolved. They are special people who have descended from above. They're special beings who have been sent from above. And the avatars have come to lead us that way, so that we go on through that evolutionary march. We don't destroy ourselves. And these are the avatars. And Sri Rama and Sri Krishna were following that path of evolutionary expansion of consciousness. This is very interesting. Sri Rama and Sri Krishna were actually following that path. They were taking us along the evolution of consciousness. But there was a change in track with Buddha and Shankara. With Buddha and Shankaracharya, there was a change in track. They left that evolutionary trajectory. They didn't pursue that because for them, they understood that the multiplicity was impermanent. After all, the multiplicity is impermanent. Even if we go back to Godhead, again everything will be dissolved, everything will become the one again. So why waste our time there? Live, get liberated from everything, liberated from the manifestation, and go to the great source directly without taking all this hardship of this evolutionary procession, this evolutionary struggle, this evolutionary ascension. Such difficulties, such hardships are there. Why bear all these things? Ultimately, everything will go back there, and everything, the one will only remain. So forget the multiplicity. So that was one thing. Only multiplicity was given, and if it is a game where multiplicity has been given, that game has to be played, and it has to become perfect. The multiplicity also has to become perfect and to be aware of the unity from where it has come. Perhaps, as Sri Aurobindo said, that if that can be done, the multiplicity will not dissolve. Creation will not dissolve. Creation would continue. Creation will continue if that can be done. If the multiplicity is made aware of the implicit unity, then what can happen is that the thing, that everything can go on. Because for Sri Aurobindo doesn't believe in that very what you call elementary kind of thing, that one day one gong was sounded and one became suddenly the many. He doesn't believe in that. He believes that knowledge or the truth is something which is always present in his whole, and always the unity is there, always the multiplicity is there. If the multiplicity is not there, the unity alone remains. That's why we can say that the unity is more basic than the multiplicity. But always it can be there or on that side. But the multiplicity can dissolve, but without dissolving it can remain. If the multiplicity regains its grammar and regains its correct balance with the unity principle. And that was their contention. That is why they again brought back, which Buddha and Shankaracharya left that path of the evolutionary trajectory, and Sri Aurobindo and the mother came back, and they came back as dual avatars. They came back as dual avatars. We don't know its significance. One day I think our time is up. We'll discuss one day. I think surely the time will come when the importance of the dual avatar, which we still do not know, where the masculine and the feminine principle are equally important, and the femininity, the divine femininity is given its due place. The Shakti is given its due place. It's not only the Chit, but also the Shakti. They're both of them together will create that condition where the multiplicity can actually be vibrant with unity, not uniformity, but with the unity principle. The multiplicity to be vibrant with unity needs the dual avatar, needs the Chit and Shakti. Without that, without the Shakti component, it cannot be. And that is why the dual avatar has come this time. You have to remember, only then we have a chance. Only then we have a chance that the multiplicity can go on existing without dissolving itself, because it can find back its unity, and unity has to be found back not only in terms of consciousness, but in terms of Shakti, and in terms of them together, in terms of Chit Shakti. So this is something we are peeping from a window, as we say. We have very, very great vision, which is there, which has been given by Sri Aurobindo. There are a lot of things that can be said about the Supermind. I just selected some interesting areas which any of you who are interested can pick up that and can go on enriching yourself, enjoying yourself in that great work that has been laid down, the future that has been laid down. And Sri Aurobindo said that he has done a great deal of work, a little bit is remaining, That also in God's Labor, in that famous poem, he has given the first stanza and the last stanza, if you read, that mostly he has done, and the way has been constructed, only a little bit is remaining. And that little bit of work that we have to do, which is nothing, which is great. He says it is a little bit. It is great according to our standards, but according to the divine, what has been done, that is nothing what we have to do, because what has been done is unimaginable, what they have done, and they have done for the creation, they have done for the future. Sri Aurobindo always used to talk about the Vishnu strides, not of the Vishnu strides of the Puranas, but the Vishnu strides where you see that Shiva is destroying and the Brahma is creating, but always Vishnu is preserving, but Vishnu is not given that importance always. It's Shiva who is destroying gets more importance, Brahma who is creating is getting more importance. But then Sri Aurobindo wanted Vishnu also to get the same importance, Vishnu who is preserving, so that unendingly the creation will continue. The creation has to continue unendingly, and that would be Vishnu's great work, Vishnu's great stride, if the creation continues unendingly. That's what Sri Aurobindo is interested, that this creation has to go on unendingly. It should not dissolve. Mother said that every time that there was a proloi, there was a dissolution, which is there in the Indian scriptures. She said that it is correct. Every time there was a dissolution, there was a, every time creation dissolved because something was missing. All creations before, all the cycles before didn't go to their ends, which was planned out. That end was not arrived at. Something was missing. In this creation, if the supramental pursuit is made, then the creative, that missing element will not be there, and then the creation can be unending. So that's the beauty of Mother and Shiva in this works and the Supermind, which far surpasses all types of religious thinkings and all. It surpasses everything. So it is more than high spirituality. It is more than world transcending spirituality. It is a spirituality that encompasses the multiverses, not only our universe, but the multiverses. So I think that our time is up. It's 5:03. If James permits us, then we'll just break for a few minutes before coming back again. Yes, over to you, James.
Yes, certainly. Let's have a break. Yeah. Thank you.
James?
Yes, sure. Sure. Fine.
Now, that sonnet was the dream of surreal science. And well, about Kali Yuga and Satya Yuga and all different cycles have been described in different ways. But why the new consciousness is being descended now? Why not then? Because this truth of the supermind, the truth of the supermind was not known. This is the truth that the world had to wait until Sri Aurobindo revealed it. That's what Sri Aurobindo's uniqueness, that he has revealed it. Until Sri Aurobindo revealed it, that the whole truth was not known. So that it takes also ages and ages for the whole thing to be manifested. That the truth was not known, the supramental truth was not known. And the time and space were created will require, actually, we require a separate session if you want to understand the whole thing. But what I wanted to say that the time and space were both created when consciousness and force, Chit Shakti, were separated with the principle of inequality, separated at first Chit and Shakti. Knowledge and will were separated. As for example, our knowledge and willpower are not in consonance with each other, not in harmony with each other. And after consciousness and force was separated, Chit and Shakti was separated, the principle of inequality went on working in the field of consciousness to produce divisions, divisible space, consciousness was divided to produce space. And that Shakti, that multiple distribution of the force, the multiple distribution of force gave rise to what we know as time. Time was created as an extension of consciousness, and also space was created as an extension of consciousness, but time was a subjective extension and the space was an objective extension of consciousness. So there's an extension of consciousness. This is a consciousness that has been extended into different paradigms, and this just for the moment remember this. Afterwards you think that we can have separate sessions on that to understand it fully. But time, which we measure by divisible, by what you call mobility, and space, which we measure by divisibility, came out from the supramental consciousness when the principle of equality was introduced in consciousness. Then the spaces were produced, divisible spaces were produced, and when it was introduced into the time factor, into what you call the force or the Shakti as multiple distribution of forces. As space got divided, force got distributed. So space got divided and the force got distributed. When a divisibility gave rise to space, and the multiplication or the what you call the way that was multiple distribution of the forces that gave rise to time. Now, if the space and time that what Sri Aurobindo is saying are dual dimensions of the Brahman. Now, difficulty for us it is understanding it, because we are always presented with Einstein's theory of space-time continuum as if they are clubbed together. But Sri Aurobindo doesn't club them together. They considers them separate. So that's why we find it difficult to understand. The space and time, we find it difficult to understand from Sri Aurobindo's perspective because we are always fed with the space-time continuum theory of Einstein from our childhood. But then you have to we have to realize that there are two different dual dimensions of the Brahman which are equally important. Now we see that divisible space. Inside yourself, just you consider how many spaces are there, then you can understand that how space is divisible. You see, it's not only space is divisible because the moon has one kind of space and the earth has one kind of space and the Mars has another kind of space. Not only because of that, you see, within ourselves we have so many spaces. We have a space which holds our thoughts, which have a space which holds our emotions, and there is a space even that surpasses us. Like that, when Sri Aurobindo said that you have anger and you tremble with anger, and that anger itself, that vibration of anger is creating a space. Around you, a space has been created. So much, a vibration of that space is so seeming and what you call pulsating with anger that nobody is being able to come close to you. They might get hit because you can give them a punch. So there you see, and then he talks about deep inside in the fourth dimension. In the fourth dimension, we have a soul space, a space that hosts the soul, or the what in ancient terms in India it was known as the Chidakash. So you can understand the space is so divisible. And time being non-linear, what I say that we consider time as present, past, future, but these things are actually misnomers. Every moment contains the past, and every moment contains the future as a potentiality, and the past as something that has led to that present moment. So now you can say that can we not have a moment that is free from the past, free from the future, a fluid moment? But it is difficult. You can say that we can have a moment that is free from the unconscious. Unconscious, the past is the unconscious, and our future possibilities also we build from our experiences we have in the unconscious. It's not the future that the divine has for us. You see, the divine has a future for us that is different. When we think about the future, we construct it according to our unconscious knowledge that is stored in our unconscious. From there we store other orders, we get intuitions, we get glimpses from above. Otherwise, we are unconscious brains. Now, to have to live a moment which is totally free from the unconscious, a fluid moment, a totally free moment, then you have to go deep inside your inner being, deep inside your inner being, perhaps your inmost being, your soul space. There you can have a moment, or high above, in a very high overhead consciousness. There you can have a moment which is not connected with the unconscious, which is not. If you go to the psychic, there you can enjoy a moment which is not connected with the unconscious. You can still live a moment. You can try to do that, but otherwise, in our ordinary life, all moments are linked with the unconscious. But then that's what I was telling. The time, actually, our conception of time is different. If your conception of time changes, then you can understand there can be a vision where the past, present, and future, so-called past, present, and future, can be actually present together. That's the Trikal Drishti that has been given to us in our scriptures. We have been always told about Trikal Drishti. That is the Trikal Drishti. Yes, patterns were created to have order in the universe, and because of that is there lurking in our consciousness, in our collective consciousness, in our cosmic consciousness. These patterns are there, and it is that those patterns that are directing, or they are modulating our behavior, outward our behaviors, our actions, our dreams. Also, they are the patterns that they come out in our dreams, and they determine all our activities. All our activities are, and then we are also, that's why, attracted to patterns, to symbols. No, that's why we're attracted to symbols. So you see that we have an innate attraction to symbols. So the communists were objecting in Bengal. They were objecting with the image of Saraswati, with the swan there as a symbol. And then once I was invited to during the communist reign in Bengal, then I was invited to a communist party program, blood donation program or something like that, and they brought one iron rod and they put it on the ground, and they said that it is for the martyrs, the column of the martyrs, and everybody has to go and put a garland there on that iron rod. My wife was very puzzled because she was always accustomed to give garlands to mother and Sri Aurobindo. How she was going to give a garland to an iron rod? Then I told them, this is the symbol. You have made this iron rod a symbol of the martyrs. So you can have a symbol of swan as Saraswati is a better symbol, because the swan actually discriminates between milk and water. So he knows the discrimination between truth and falsehood. So there's a better symbol of the goddess of knowledge. So what do you have? Why do you have an objection there? Yes, yes, of course, Monica, what you are saying is right. That this our main concern is that we have separated the we have not separated. Knowledge and will have been separated in our psyche. It has been it is our task now to build upon it, and our task is to go on building it, and that bringing them together will not be totally complete, it will not be perfectly perfect until we reach the supermind. But short of that, we have to go on doing it. Unless we do it, then life becomes meaningless, because you have an important will, or you have or an important knowledge. You have something which is always incomplete. In practical life also, you see, when somebody asks me about any political leader, their analysis of any political leader, I always say that if you want from Sri Aurobindo's perspective, then you have to see it from knowledge and will. That knowledge and will have to be brought together. If a person might have great knowledge but might not have the willpower to execute, and if he's a leader of a nation, then it doesn't depend upon an individual's knowledge. You have to collect knowledge also from people who are knowledgeable, no? Because an individual cannot have knowledge. So then you have to have a sort of knowledge, or else if you're individual, you have to go to that level of higher mind of mass ideation. So that is something which is a great dilemma. You see, it's not the I told them that it's not a fault. Just don't find fault with individual leaders. It's the phenomenon of consciousness. In our consciousness, it is now at the level of the being or the mental being that we are, knowledge and will are separated. So everybody falls in that category. So it's just not singling out a single individual who will be doing good or will be doing bad. It doesn't matter. What matters from the point of consciousness is how we can bring knowledge and will together. In our personal lives, we have to go on doing it. And in our collective life, when we have to give in charge of doing something for our community, for the country, then we have to collect this knowledge and see a group action which we are bringing, trying to bring knowledge and will at the individual level, that we have to also try to bring at the collective level for the nation. So at different levels, different causes of this bringing together knowledge and will have to be executed. That is the whole of sadhana. The knowledge and will have to be brought together. That's why Chit and Shakti, that's the reason Sri Aurobindo modified Satchitananda as short Chit Shakti Ananda. That Chit and Shakti have to go together. And that's why we have to pursue in our sadhana, we have to pursue both the things together. That is why it is needed. That's why you see, even when Sri Aurobindo is talking about making the mind silent, making the mind silent doesn't only mean he's telling that make the mind free from thoughts. He's also telling to make your personal will an universalized will. So together with it, that silence will become effective. The silence will not be effective in Sri Aurobindo's terms or in terms of integrality until that silence, just stopping to think all your habitual thoughts, is also clubbed with your linking of your personal will with the universal will. So both things have to go together. Everybody has to carve out his own way. So in Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga, everybody has to find his own yoga. So everybody has to find their own way how to do it. How you knew it will be in some way, some other person will be a different way. So everybody will have to discover one's own unique way of linking the will and the consciousness, because linking the will and the consciousness, because in some people the knowledge will be more and the willpower will be less, and some people the willpower will be more and the knowledge will be less. So there will be in different degrees. So you have to work on in unique ways. Unconscious, what we call the unconscious, sinks into the inconscious. Just below the mind is the unconscious, and below the unconscious is the inconscious. Oh, it's a very different concept. One day I would like to present to you the inconscious. Then you will find such a beautiful, what a grand concept of the inconscious. Today we had an inkling when, as the Obermind, and like a Frankenstein, it created the inconscious that you saw. That was such, and then you could see the inconscience in Shiovin's terms, in mother's terms, the inconscience is so beautiful. But I will not go into it because you will get distracted, because it is something very adventurous, extremely adventurous, like a fairy tale. The story of the inconscious, if it is told from the mother and Shiovin's perspective, is just like a fairy tale. Time is dynamic, time is movement. Nothing is constant. Yes, because time is mobility. Time is measured by mobility. So when something is mobile, it can be seem to be fast, it can seem to be slow, it can seem to be standing still. It can be like when you play the game of statues, so that time can like it appear like that. So movement will always be like that. There are different rhythms of movement, but time is not constant. Time is dynamic. So time is measured always in mobility, in terms of mobility. Nothing is constant. Nothing is constant in this world in that sense. What is constant is the background of that silence and peace and the oneness. The constant is that oneness that is there supporting the multiplicity. There you find what you say that is constant, it is there, you will find it. The constancy you will only find there in the oneness which is supporting all the multiplicity of the variation. That only find that something is constant. Otherwise, everything is dynamic. But at the end, I will tell you to remember the great importance of the twin avatar and the importance that mother has in this path. I always try to emphasize this point because we always, human beings, have ego conflicts among us. In our Shiva circle, our people who have preceded us, people who are there in the forefront before us, they've also had ego conflicts among themselves. It's not that they were all free from their egos. All the great sadhaks here and also in the outside world who had brought Shiva to the masses, to the people, or who are the ones who have started working on Shiva vision, they also had ego conflicts among themselves, but they excelled because they all love the mother. One has to love the mother. That is a very important thing. Then only all these things that we are discussing will be able to understand. Because the mother carries Shakti, the feminine principle, that is something very different. That is not explored in spirituality in a very complete way. Of course, in India it has been explored in a very unique way. But here, in conjunction with the what you call the masculinity principle, the divine has presented himself simultaneously as the twin avatars. This simultaneous presence as the twin avatars of Chit and Shakti was never there before. So this is something very unique, and we are privileged to have it. And then you have to remember that and invoke their presence together in your system, and then you will be able to bring knowledge and willpower together. Then only will be able to bring it together. The Chit and Shakti will come together. Then remember that the mother, you cannot leave her behind. You have to give her a very predominant position in your psyche, in your life, in your sadhana, in your vision. So anybody could add something? Unconscious slips into the inconscious. It is not that slightly evolved from unconscious, I can say that, but it is something unconscious slips down into the unconscious. The Freudian unconscious is the mental unconscious. And below that is the vital unconscious, there's the physical unconscious, and then all of them slip into the inconscious, which is absolute denial of anything and everything. And unless we link the personal will to the universal will, what we have, many people in India, we concentrate between the eyebrows, and that is increasing our own willpower. That is good. But in the integral perspective, that has limited value. That has very limited value. Increasing your willpower, you have increased your willpower as an individual. What is that? What is the big thing? But If you have made yourself a channel of the universality, you have made yourself one channel of the universality, then that you are working for the whole. You are working for the universal consciousness. Only you have made yourself a channel of the divine power. And then that's why you have to have what Sri Aurobindo calls an universalized will. Something was missing. Creations have ended before because mother said, but mother said that always one element was missing. Always one element was missing. But I'll tell you, I will just take 2 minutes, James, just to tell, just to add to you. You see, if you read the first page of Savitri, then what you will find, you can relate that with the you see the reclining posture of Vishnu. You have seen gone to this temple in Vishnu in Ananta Sajja. That is that figure in this Mahabalipuram temple, where Vishnu is lying in Ananta Sajja. And you see that all the creations that have gone before, after they have dissolved, they have not disappeared. They have dissolved, but they are remaining in the universe, or what you call in the multiverses, as in the unconscious of the or the inconscious of the multiverses, the inconscious of the universe. It is remaining there. They all the creations that have gone before have dissolved, but they have not disappeared. After they have dissolved, they have remained as all our things which we throw away from ourselves. They don't go away into a waste paper basket. They go into our own unconscious where they are kept. So in the unconscious that spans the universes, the multiverses, all the creations that have dissolved, they go and stay there. After dissolution, they go and stay as elements there, as unconscious elements or inconscient elements in the inconscience of the whole system, of the whole manifestation or of the whole universes. And when a new creation comes, something from there, there is something from there also comes up. Something from there also comes up to build the template in which the next creation will start happening. So every time a new creation starts, it is not starting from zero. Every time a new creation starts, it is not starting from zero. It is starting from something which has gone, something that has gone behind, and is remaining there in the inconscious. You see, read very carefully the first page of Savitri again and again. If necessary, one day, once we can have a program to describe that, but you will see it is so beautifully given that everything that has been created and has been dissolved is remaining there in the Vishnu's, in the Vishnu is holding them. Vishnu in his Ananta Sajja is holding everything. Vishnu in his Ananta Sajja, actually between the creations, between the two creations, between successive creations, Vishnu is lying there holding everything. And each time a new creation happens, each time something comes out from there to stimulate, something comes from there to act as a template, or the remembrance of something that had happened in the past. In our creation also, there might be many things that have come from the past. Who knows? There might be many idols, there might be many icons that have come from the past creations. If you ask me personally, I think, if you ask me personally, I always consider the image of Ganesha must have come from some past creation. You see, the Ganesha is an image, the only image in the world which can always you can break and make. What a fact flexibility. Throughout your life, if you are an artist, every day you can make a different Ganesh, and it will never end. You will never be out of ideas. With the trunk this side and the trunk that side and the belly this side and that upside down and all sorts of variations, endless, endless. You can throughout your life, every day, you can make a new Ganesh. You see, such kind of creativity, such kind of flexibility in creation. I don't know, I often think that it is such kind of powerful creativity. That's why it is a delight of the artists. And it must have come from something. Some things must have come from the past. Some ideas must have come from the past, which are preserved in past resolutions, were kept in Vishnu's what you call consciousness, and that's why Vishnu is there in Ananta Sajja, holding everything that has been dissolved, so that they act as a template again when the future creations will come. Of course, something new will be added. Every time it will not be a mere repetition of the past, something new will be added, but something from the past will also be there as a template. Thank you. Over to James.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Basu, and magnanimous sessions over these past 6 days. Just wanted to kind of reiterate what you were sharing again and again over the past few sessions, that we have to make our effort, active effort, as you were saying, and also keep on continuously opening to the Mother's Grace, Sri Aurobindo and Mother, read their works so that our mind expands, and do our effort and continuously open ourselves to the Mother. So beautiful sessions, and really thank you so much. And I'll just pass it over to James. James, yeah.
Yes, thank you. And love the Mother too. Love the Mother. Wonderful sessions, Dr. Basu. You've imparted a very rarefied atmosphere into the whole 6 days, and I think we've all greatly benefited from your wisdom and insights, and we hope to see you again soon. We have many sessions coming up, Nama, online, so keep posted, stay tuned, because it's going to be a busy few months, and we hope you can join us again. But thank you very much, Dr. Basu. Thank you, Monica. Thank you, everyone, for participating in this wonderful program, and see you again soon. Goodbye.